you think Bob's action was honest or dishonest?
To be honest may sound easy. Some of the time it is, but it can be a real problem.
Especially when wanting to be honest conflicts with other things you want to do.
We spend so much time teaching our kids the American ethics that made this country so much better than every other nation before it.
Equal justice is another thing that's essential in democracy.
Honesty, truth, justice.
More like a Justice League.
We were together, now we're nothing.
Liberty. And justice for all. But then we grow up.
Our hopes were so high, we were standing so tall.
Boys' lessons don't fit with man's desires.
You've broken my heart, now wait for the pieces to fall.
And for the rest of us, we just turn a blind eye.
No evidence of wrongdoing tied to his son Hunter Biden's Ukraine business has actually been found.
Justice for some.
Sometimes it takes a lot of testing to find the truth.
And justice for all just disappears. I'm sick and tired of it. No, not tired. Exhausted. Exhausted of year after year watching the elite, our elected officials, try to control us like puppets in a kid's play. They lie, they cheat, manipulate, steal. Steal from us, the very people who put them there. We gave them their power, and now they'll do anything to keep it. By lying, cheating, manipulating, stealing, and now destroying the leader that Americans went and fought hard for and elected.
Defend the Constitution, so help me God.
And what used to be behind closed curtains, now right in front of us, they just laugh at us.
The credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump.
They cheer for the most divisive outcome we have seen in how long?
Article 1 is adopted.
Smiling to each other as their master plan gets further and further to final fruition. They started this on day one of Trump.
Bullies don't win because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the
And as each attempt to regain power and control failed, a new plan was hatched that all centered around now a July 25th phone call. Quid pro quo.
has been at the center of this Democratic impeachment.
No, now it's bribery. No political investigations.
He wanted.
No, he wants to bring Biden down.
He does not want to run against me.
No, he's going to steal the 2020 election.
To the Oval Office.
This is all a bunch of bull. And we now have everything. The final piece of the puzzle to prove to you how much bullcrap they've been shoveling. Tonight, I'm going to connect all the pieces and show you. We'll show using actual evidence. Every claim that they made about Donald Trump and Ukraine is a lie, and I will show you the documentation. They told you this.
Was the allegation that you had created a do not prosecute list true?
Well, we showed you this.
Lysenko states to the Ukrainian news site, The Babel. She said, dictate a list of involatile persons.
They said this.
Vice President Biden called for the removal of Mr. Shokin because of his failure to adequately combat corruption.
But we proved them wrong with this.
Here's what Shokin states. I was forced out because I was leading a wide-ranging corruption probe into Burisma Holdings.
Again and again and again as their mask came off. Their deception became unhinged.
I can't understand your being so calm about having a thief on your team.
Where is the justice? He didn't do the things they're saying he did. They'll drag anybody through the dirty, corrupt avenues of Washington, D.C. Donald Trump likely is going to survive this battle.
Not guilty as charged.
Battle against a crooked and immoral group of people in D.C. who have plagued our nation's power for far too long. At the end of the day, this isn't about Donald Trump. Because if the power elite are this desperate to destroy the most powerful man in the world, and they can get away with it, what would they do to you? But have hope.
I've always heard that honesty is the best policy.
In a very American act, another group of citizens who have been lied to, ignored by their government, belittled and treated with contempt. They had decency and relentless perseverance, and they just broke the back of one of the world's most powerful bodies.
But what we proved is the British are too big to bully, thank goodness.
America, it's our turn, but we start with the facts right now.
Hello, America, and welcome to the Glenn Beck program. We've spent a lot of time over the last 8 months on this chalkboard. And in some ways, it has paid off. The lies did not work with the American people, and the president was acquitted. So why are we going back? Because most people are tired of Burisma and Joe Biden and everything else. Because we have the final piece to the puzzle. This came to me right after Thanksgiving. And we have been working on just this document for this special since. This document opens up a whole new world. Impeachment is now over. It is in the past. That's done. Donald Trump was acquitted, and we need to move beyond that. But not beyond the corruption. Now it is time to look into what led up to it. It is time that we go on the offensive. We are not going to take this corruption lying down. The president fought and won. Now it is our turn. Now, we've been on this from the very beginning, trying to actually get to the bottom of what's really going on between the Democrats and Ukraine and eventually President Trump. And it has taken us about 4 months, 3 specials. We started uncovering the coordination between the DNC and the Obama administration and the government of Ukraine to weaponize their relationship to influence the 2016 election. That was special number 1. And we thought, wow, this is really bad. But nothing's been done. In special 2, we showed you how terrified the left has become with any of this coming to light. The media launched one of the biggest misinformation and, I think, disinformation campaigns I've ever seen. And then we got the full magnitude for why they were so scared while we were developing our 3rd special. There was no other name to call it but Hydra, the State Department and their proxies like George Soros, our intelligence, deep state, sowing chaos all over the world. Ukraine was just a small part of it. But tonight's show is almost an overlay. It's everything else, I think, was just a side benefit of what we found after we read this. It explains everything. This document led us to this final piece. And after 3 specials, this piece of paper led us to how could this all happen? How could so many people be involved and not have a problem with it? We followed the money trail. We found possible criminal action that led to a massive money laundering racket using your money. Now that we know. But I believe we can also, only the Treasury Department will be able to prove this. We can't, but I can take you right to the fount. I can take you right to the water. I believe at the end of this hour, you will understand that the Obama administration fought an unauthorized war without the authorization of Congress by laundering money, your money. I believe we have uncovered Iran-Contra Part 2, and this one is worse. After tonight's show, you will know exactly why President Trump was so interested in Joe and Hunter Biden. You'll also know why he delayed the military funding. It had nothing to do with politics. Do they overlap? Yes. Yes, they do. Of course they do. But Joe and Hunter Biden are very small fish compared to the much bigger, larger investigation. And there are two very important questions here. Was all of this just about money and an election? Or did this start out about an unauthorized war? Well, to discover that, we have to go back to when all of this leaked out, the July 25th phone call. It doesn't bring me any joy to tell you these things, but I will tell you this. Someone must investigate. Someone must tell you the truth. And we have worked really hard, relentless hours on my team to bring this information and to try our very best to get it right. Before we move on, may I just take a second to thank you for becoming a paid subscriber to BlazeTV. All that you're about to see tonight is funded by you. I was just with Cheryl Atkinson in Washington. We spent about 2 hours together talking about investigations that she's working on. And she told me that she takes 4 months for a 20-minute special. 4 months of investigation. Sometimes 60 minutes takes a year. And they have unlimited budgets. Our budget comes from you and your subscription to The Blaze. The mainstream media is completely out of control. They have become full-on surrogates for the left. They are blind with their hatred and rage, and they are also in the bag for an ideology that simply is not American. And they're not even trying to pretend anymore. Your subscription will help fund the type of research that you're about to see tonight, and you will not find this anywhere else. It also helps us build the Blaze network even bigger. We have the best people that are working here now. I think we are the second largest conservative voice in the world behind Fox News. We have a long way to go, but somebody has to do it. And the time has never been more crucial than right now. We have an election night coming in 8 months. The mainstream media has made their intentions all too clear. If you want to fight back, let's go on the offensive. Go to blazetv.com right now and subscribe. Use the promo code GB20OFF. You'll get $20 off your annual subscription. It is literally the price of a cup of coffee from Starbucks, which is what, $67 a month now? No, it's the price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks. And this actually does good. blazetv.com. Use the promo code GB20OFF. Okay, now the rest of the hour, we're just going for meat. I want to start tonight by going to that July 25th phone call, because that is where the Democrats' deception began. And I just have to quickly go and do a recap to show you where we've been and what we do know. The left has been driving the narrative on this. The media has not done their job at all. And the end result, possibly the largest propaganda, misinformation, disinformation operation hatched within our own government. So now that impeachment is dead, let's open up the body. Let's look and do an autopsy, the anatomy now of the Democrats' lie. But we start where they started, July 25th, the phone call. They seized on a few key words and phrases, and from the start, there were 4 things that bothered me and stuck out. And we haven't discussed these. They've just bothered me. For instance, CrowdStrike was one of them. This is where the narrative of, he believes in conspiracy theories. He thinks Russia didn't try to interfere with the election. This is where it literally came from. And everyone fell for this. And quite honestly, I didn't know what to think about it. I'm like, why would he talk about this? That's discredited conspiracy theory. What is he doing? Because the left also instantly connected it to the conspiracy theory, and they ran on that. But did anyone bother to ask the president why he brought it up? I wonder is it possible that CrowdStrike means something entirely different? Same company, but nothing like the conspiracy theory. Something that you can actually find the facts on. I'm being rhetorical. I know the answer. You will too in a few minutes. Let's move on. The next line in the call that didn't make sense to me at the time: I think you're surrounding yourself with people of some of the same people, bad guys. Now, we looked for months on who these people might be, and we did find a connection to Soros. And I gave it to you in the Hydra special. But that's not enough. That's not enough. And it wasn't until recently that we nailed it down. Next one. I heard you had a prosecutor who was very good and he was shut down, end quote. The president here was obviously making a reference to the guy that most of us, especially if you've watched my other specials, know very well, Viktor Shokin. He's the Ukrainian prosecutor general that Joe Biden quid pro quo'd out of office. In that same paragraph, Trump again mentions bad actors involved. He said, quote, you have some very bad people involved. Who? What? But finally, the sin of all sins, the president actually had the audacity to utter these two words, Biden's son. Now, from these 4 lines in the transcript that bothered me and the research team, the left spun a narrative that the president was chasing conspiracy theories just to influence the 2020 election. But what if there's a missing piece? What if there's something else going on? What if I told you that all of these references are all connected? Every single one. CrowdStrike, the people that were surrounding the Ukrainian president, the fired prosecutor, and yes, Hunter Biden. Well, now we'd be getting someplace. Now we'd be getting to a place where we weren't reacting to what the other side was feeding us. We would be being proactive and on the offense. And now we would have something that we would say, wait a minute, there's real trouble here. After several months and multiple specials, I think I can take you as far as I can. Now it's up to the senators and Congress. And I will tell you that tomorrow morning, and I urge you to tweet this link to Rob Johnson and also Senator Grassley. They are already beginning an investigation, and I believe they may already be on this. I have had this vetted by a few members of Congress and others. We have been trying to do our best to get it right. This will be delivered to Senator Grassley and Johnson tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with all the evidence. The case involving Joe Biden and Hunter Biden explains everything. And he is the lead for U.S. prosecutors that could reveal corruption inside Ukraine on a massive scale. So let's put aside all the political overlap for a minute, okay? Investigating Hunter Biden, if it could help investigators to stop the theft of $1.8 billion plus of your money, shouldn't we pursue that? I want to take you back to our first special for just a second. I showed you that prosecutors from Ukraine wanted to give us information on 6 things. Watch this carefully. They wanted to give us, and were turned down by the ambassador, 1, sworn statements from Ukrainian officials admitting that their agency tried to influence the 2016 election. 2, contacts between Democratic figures in Washington and Ukrainian officials involved in gathering dirt on Donald Trump. This is, I think, the DNC, Chalupa, and Ukrainian embassy tie that we showed you in the first episode. 3, financial records showing a Ukrainian national gas company routing more than $3 million to Hunter Biden. 4, records showing Joe Biden pressured Ukrainian officials to fire Shokin. And 5, correspondence that prove the State Department and U.S. Embassy in Ukraine interfered in criminal cases on Ukrainian soil. The last one, 6, disbursements of as much as $7 billion that may have been misappropriated, seeing that we can't find any of it, and taken out of the country. Now, when I looked at those, I saw them all as one. But then we started looking at it differently. And we realized that these 6 pieces of evidence are grouped this way on a purpose. 1 and 2, they are dealing with Ukrainian efforts to influence the 2016 election. We've covered that extensively. But points 3 through 6, the millions routed through Hunter Biden, the firing of Shokin, the interference of Ukrainian criminal case, and the missing $7 billion are all about one thing. Possibly the largest and most successful money laundering racket in history, and what I believe is a proxy war that the Obama administration authorized and Congress wasn't aware of. $7 billion is gone. Now think about that. That's not pocket change Grandma gave you to go buy a pack of smoke. Get me a pack of smokes in the store, will you? That's more money than Ukraine has allotted for their annual defense budget ever, even at war. $7 billion is actually over $2 billion more than Ukraine used to defend their country against Russia in an active war. Venezuela currently has an iron grip on the poor and starving people. Maduro is keeping everyone in check with payoffs to his military. He is able to do that with less than 10% of what's been stolen in Ukraine. Less than 10%. They have less than $800,000 in cash. Imagine what someone could do with $7 billion. This is regime and possibly world-altering money. And here's the kicker. A large portion of that missing money is yours. Your work, your tax dollars. When you work from January until, what is it now? March, April, May? All that money that you earned all goes to the government. You gave it to Uncle Sam. And what did they do with it? Now tell me, as a taxpayer, if the president is about to make a decision to send billions more in cash and $400 million more in military aid, would it be relevant to inquire about that? I know this is a ridiculous question. We've asked it a million times, but the narrative from the Democrats has brought us here. So let's go back now to the mention of Biden's son in the July 25th phone call. Was it political, or does it have anything to do with something bigger? All right, next level. At this point, everyone knows that Hunter Biden was sitting on the board of a Ukrainian energy company called Burisma. We also know that Joe Biden had the prosecutor general in Ukraine fired while he was investigating Burisma and Hunter Biden. But how do we know that Burisma was corrupt? And this is crucial. It all began with a wire transfer of $23 million back in 2014. And it wasn't us, it was the British government that noticed it. As soon as the Ukrainian regime fell, the head of Burisma, his name is Zelensky, he transferred $23 million to a bank in London. And the Brits immediately froze the accounts because they followed the money. I mean, $23 million, you can transfer. If I had it, I could transfer that to London and it wouldn't be a big deal. But this $23 million got around. And let me show you. And this is critical for you to understand because you're going to see this pattern again. The funds originated here in Ukraine. And via a shell company here in Cyprus, the money, $23 million, went to Cyprus, to these little shell companies. A shell company is something that really doesn't exist. Think of it as a Shell gas station that doesn't have any pumps or mechanics or oil or even the little thing that you squeegee. None of that. Nothing. It's a shell company. Now, they took that money and they put it into a shell company. Now, that was flag number one, because if you want to move large amounts of laundered money, this is how it's done. The funds then traveled here to a bank in Latvia. Now, I'm in Cyprus. I'm sure they have a bank with a branch right there. Why am I going to Latvia? You have to go to Latvia because in Latvia, it is known there's a few Eastern Bloc countries that have very low regulations. And everybody in the world knows money that's going into these banks, even Latvia knows this, Latvia knows, the world knows, if you're going in there, what you're probably doing is laundering money. And I'll show you how that works here in a second. It's important to know. He didn't send it right to London because he can't. He has to have, this is dirty money, shell corporations, put it in a bank in Latvia. Latvia then cleans the money. It's a money launderer. They launder the money, make it clean, and then he can put it in new shell companies here. That's how all of this works. Okay. So now let's go a little bit deeper, shall we? The case against Burisma has continued off and on, all up until today. But the money was frozen at 23 million, while the UK was looking into that and tracking it. As that was happening, as they had frozen the accounts, and everyone in the world in the government knew that that money was being frozen, Hunter Biden joined the Burisma board. Okay, well, maybe Dad didn't tell him. Okay, I don't think that's possible, but maybe Dad didn't tell him. Not only did he not seem to care about his new company being investigated for stealing and laundering money, he also apparently didn't mind that the primary owner of Burisma, a guy named Kolomoisky, we've told you about him before, he was on a U.S. visa ban list. Now, we've told you that. But once we really started looking into him, now we get a different picture. Why is he banned from traveling? Why does the United States say, don't do any business with him? Because he was on this ban list from the United States for, get this, murders and beheadings. Also hiring rowdies armed with chainsaws and using brute force to intimidate rival companies. This guy seems to be the Tony Soprano. This is a really bad guy. This didn't faze either of the Bidens at all. And wouldn't you know it, a few months later, this guy that was banned for arming rowdies with chainsaws and performing beheadings with them magically got a brand new visa to go to the U.S. Now, why would Joe Biden clear this guy? Violent background, banned from the U.S. His money is embezzling and laundering money. Why would you do that? More importantly, as a dad, I think he loves his son. Why would he say, oh, yeah, son, you sure you know what you're doing? The guy is Tony Soprano. He will kill you with a chainsaw. I'd love an actual answer, because it looks suspiciously like the Bidens were legitimizing and protecting a billionaire thug. I want to concentrate tonight on legitimizing, giving him the keys to the castle. The United States is endorsing you can do business with him. Why in God's green earth would we tell the rest of the world, hey, this guy's okay. He's open for business. What could possibly be the motivation? Well, tonight I'm going to do something, because I don't want to be everything that I despise or become everything I despise. I'm going to do for Joe Biden what the media has never done for either me, you, or especially Donald Trump. I'm going to assume that Joe Biden loves his country and his son. Okay, so I assume that it's not about money. What could it possibly be? What is another motive? At the same time all of this was happening, Biden, as the point man for Ukraine, and Secretary of State John Kerry, they began lobbying for $1.8 billion, an aid package to Ukraine specifically to stabilize their banking system. Did you know that your tax dollars, not only in 2008, went to bail out the banks here, but under Obama, in 2014, 2015, they were lobbying and got $1.8 billion to bail out the Ukrainian banks. And they lost that money. It was put into one bank, Privat Bank. Remember, this is happening the same time the Obama administration is refusing to give Ukraine any lethal military aid. Obama did not want to antagonize the Russians. He didn't want to send those messages. And that policy remained up until President Trump got in, when he greenlit military aid and a missile system and sent it to him. And then he stopped. Why? Now, this is one of those things that bothered me. During the impeachment, do you remember the Democrats, how they just kept saying Trump was putting them, the Ukrainians, in danger? It was our responsibility to help fight the war with Russia. But I said the whole time, where were you? You literally refused to give them anything but blankets. Congress wanted to send it. You said no. Oh, and that $1.8 billion, your money, guess where it is? No, seriously, guess, because that's what I'm doing tonight. I'm guessing it's gone. Nearly $2 billion flowed from the U.S. Treasury to Privat Bank in Ukraine, and that's the last time anybody has seen it. We have the deposit slip. Where is our money? Back in December, I revealed this. This is a letter from a State Department official, George Kent. Now, he was a impeachment witness against the president, okay? I showed you this letter. The letter was a response to the Ukrainian Prosecutor General, who was claiming that the U.S. provided funds that were being allocated improperly. They're trying to figure out, you've lost a lot of money here, and we're investigating. And he says, I'd like to make it clear, the United States has no concerns about the use of our funds for our joint project with the Prosecutor General's office. Furthermore, we have also said publicly none of this assistance funds were provided directly to any entity within the Prosecutor General's office, blah, blah, blah. We have accounted for every single foreign assistance dollar provided within the framework of this project, and is our practice for every project we support Ukraine. We are completely satisfied with the assistance in question that has not only been used for those purposes and those stated above. I do not see any grounds from our perspective as the donor who provided the assistance for any investigation into its use. Wow. They're comfortable. Hey, as the guy who helped pay for that 1.8, I'm not really comfortable. Can you tell me where the $1.8 billion went? Because I'm not with you on this. I know we deposited it in Privat Bank. Now, that's Ukrainian's state bank. That's important. This is the bank that handles all the payrolls for both government officials and the military. Do you know who the co-founder of the bank is and the one with the majority ownership? Yeah. Kolomoisky. Same guy Hunter was working for. The same guy. That guy. The same guy mysteriously just granted a U.S. visa. The same guy that the U.S. said, hey, he's open for business. You know, despite the beheadings with the chainsaws. Wow. Now, let me just pause for a moment for emphasis. Kolomoisky's company, Burisma, was implicated in a money laundering ring. Hunter Biden, then knowing this, goes to work for him a few weeks later. The State Department then lifts a travel ban because Joe Biden asks for it. And then a few months after that, Vice President Biden and John Kerry lobby for $1.8 billion to be delivered directly into his bank. And that just goes poof. What do they know we don't know? What use is a billionaire thug that apparently has untold amounts of funds hidden away in vast money laundering rackets all around the world? Well, let me tell you something else that no one has told you. 1 month before Hunter Biden joined his board, 2 months before the travel ban was lifted by the Obama administration, Kolomoisky was appointed a governor in eastern Ukraine. Wow, look at that. It's right there at the front lines on Russia, where the war was raging. But despite pushing Obama to arm the Ukrainians, no, we didn't. No, he maintained his stance. We don't want to do anything to antagonize Russia. So he sent them blankets. Now, I'm just curious here, side note. If you're the president of the United States and you really don't want to piss Putin off, then how do you explain the relationship between Vice President's son with Kolomoisky and the $1.8 billion directly into his bank that disappeared? You don't think Putin can figure this out? You don't think Putin and his resources? My gosh, when I saw this, I thought, no wonder they have been attacking our elections. We're in a proxy war, and they know it. The administration knew it. You just didn't know it. Now, how can you make that charge? Well, the reason why I ask this question is because Kolomoisky is known inside Ukraine and inside Russia as, get this, quote, the oligarch who bankrolled Ukraine's war. Wow, that's a direct quote. You see, the former president of Ukraine, the one the Obama administration and the State Department backed completely, was pushing for a policy appointing rich oligarchs as governors, especially in the areas that were threatened by the war with Russian separatists, to finance the war effort, because they didn't have any money. There was no army. They had nothing in the bank. So Kolomoisky, the guy who owns the bank, the guy who uses his private funds, now is funding a private army. He's already done it with chainsaws. Now he's doing it for real. And he was able to travel around and do business everywhere because he was legitimized by both Obama and Ukraine, so he could allegedly fight the Russians. Here's what we do know for sure, that he provided equipment and fuel for the Ukrainian army. He began the financing for private volunteer battalions on the front line. One battalion in particular, I think it's Dnipro, had 2,000 combat-ready troops with several thousand more in reserve. Millions of dollars flowed from Kolomoisky's bank account straight into the war with Russia. And the name of that militia, Dnipro, I think, got its name from the city that all of the members are from. But it's also the city where the main headquarters for Privat Bank is located. And I only mention this because something really incredible happens there on September 11th, 2019. Remember that date. I'll come back later to it. I can't tell you for sure I can tell you that the facts, I can tell you what the facts are. I can't tell you for sure that your 1.8 is what bought those arms. But boy, I can't explain it anything. Where else did it go? Why do we not care? I care if he went and he bought a bunch of Bugattis. Perhaps I don't care if I'm in the administration or the deep state if I know that money did not buy Bugattis, but instead bought weapons for a war that was not sanctioned by Congress. Now, this money, this 1.8, was specifically earmarked to stabilize the banks. That's insult enough. But then it was stolen and laundered by a guy who's been implicated in a money laundering racket and financing a war against Russia. That we all know. And if they knew that, why were they so adamant? They were so confident in how the U.S. aid money was being spent. It wasn't used to stabilize the banks. It was either used by a thug to buy Bugattis or tanks. It seems like kind of a big deal, right? I mean, especially if this was happening all under the table, without the approval of Congress. What if this didn't have anything to do, if the beating Trump in 2016 was just a side benefit? It was just something that also happened because we're doing business in such a corrupt way. What if it wasn't about Joe Biden's son getting rich? Listen to this. If you say to, think of any mob movie you've ever seen. If you say to a Tony Soprano, hey, listen, what we're going to do here is I'm going to give you some of this money, and you're going to go do this crime for me, and we and the cops, we're just going to turn a blind eye. What do they always say in every movie? Oh, really? That's what you're going to do? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Could you give him a gun, please? Give him a gun. Okay, Mr. Cop, shoot that guy. Right? Shoot that guy. I want to know you're in. I want to know you're dirty now, too. Is it possible that Hunter Biden, it was insisted upon that, I'm sorry, Mr. Biden, you're gonna let me have free reign. I'm going to build this army, and then you're not going to come and get me. I'm going to be free? Really? Chainsaw? Remember that? Really? I tell you what. Why don't you send your son over here? I'll put him on the board. And you know what? We're going to launder some money. We're going to send it his way. If I go down, you go down. It explains why when they said, we're calling the president, you can't do that. When he tried to stop that investigation, he said, go ahead. President Obama's already approved it. That couldn't have happened if it was just about Joe Biden making money. That could only happen if the president was in on it, and not on the corruption, but on money laundering to fund an army. What if all along this was just about that? A war with Russia, a new Iran-Contra. Is this why Joe Biden was so determined to have the prosecutor general fired for looking into Burisma? Why he has been doing everything he can to make sure his son wasn't interviewed or anything? Because I know I would. If I had my son alongside a guy with a chainsaw that was beheading people, I would fight pretty hard to make sure that none of this came out. Why did he fight so hard to have Kolomoisky legitimized? A billionaire who happens to know how to hide dirty money and is known as a financier for the war against Russia. Wow, he seems really useful for a State Department and a group of people that don't want to get involved, but know the patriotic thing is to get involved. They really wanted to fight the Russians. We've seen that passion. But they couldn't let anybody know because the president doesn't want anybody to know. Even though Congress wanted to do it, they couldn't go to Congress because no one could know. The question everyone should be asking right now is how far up the chain of command did this go? Because there is no way that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden was like, you know what, we're in Air Force Two. Let's do a proxy war. This had to be approved from the highest echelons of the administration. And you want proof?
I will tell you, because as Secretary of State, I was deeply involved in this. All of us in the administration were trying to get rid of that prosecutor. From Obama to the Secretary of State to the Vice President, all of us were working on that. The ambassador, and we knew if Ukraine was going to survive and win the revolution in the end, the Maidan, they had to get rid of that prosecutor, and they did.
Wait, did you catch that? Did you catch that? Firing Ukraine's prosecutor general, the man following the laundering of the money through Burisma and Hunter Biden, it was important to fire him to ensure that Ukraine would, quote, win the revolution, the Maidan. That is the war against Russia. So wait a minute, you were sending blankets. How did you have to fire them to stop the investigation so they could win the war? You're telling me this wasn't about corruption, John Kerry? Did Kerry just reveal the secret plot to fight Russia in a kinetic war using proxy forces and your money? And per the former Secretary of State, it was approved at the very top. Wow. Is it just me? Do you think maybe it's time to finally track down the 1.8? Do you think maybe the American people should now that you have crushed and you recognize the truth, not just you, but our Democratic neighbors, they didn't believe this stuff either. Something is wrong. isn't it time we ask what happened to our money? I don't think we're ever going to be able to find out for sure where it all ended up. But governments all over the world are trying. But Kolomoisky's web was built to stay off the radar. 1 year into the war between Ukraine and Russia, back in 2015, an investigative journalist named Nashi Groshi released information that pulled the curtain back on the sprawling money laundering racket. And I want to show you exactly how it works. Actually, before I show you how it works or where your money went, let me just give you a little money laundering 101 so you have a basic understanding of how money laundering works. Let's say you are a really bad guy and you got millions of dollars and, you know, I mean, you were born to be a bad guy. You are wearing a mask all the time and black and white stripes. So you got all this money. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? You can't spend that money. You've seen it don't spend the money. We just robbed the banks. Don't spend the money. As soon as you spend the money, they're on to you. Why? Because the FBI, the IRS, or Interpol, the Treasury, they are all looking at who's transferring money and where did that money come from. So you can't put it into a regular bank because a regular bank is going to alert all these people that you just made an unusually large deposit or you're now buying stuff. So you instead have to go here to a dirty bank. 1 hour Martinizing of your money. Actually, it's a little longer than that, and here's how you do it. Sorry to give you a lesson, kids. Maybe you should apologize to the parents on how to launder money, but this is how you do it. You go to a dirty bank. Usually it's in some place like Latvia or Cyprus. And you go to that bank and they make you a loan. Let's say you have $1 million to what you want cleaned. So you go to that bank and you say, I'm starting a new shell company. No, I don't have any gas pumps, oil, or any of the squeegee things, but I'm going to start a new shell company. They say, that's a fantastic idea. I think there's a lot of winking going on here. That's a fantastic. How much do you need? Well, I need probably $10 million. Well, do you have anything that is collateral? Yeah, I've got $1 million here and I can make those payments. Okay, all right, we'll do that. So the dirty bank says, we'll give you a loan for $10 million, but you got to pay it off. So you start making payments and you make your dirty payments in your dirty dollars until there are no more dirty dollars left, that $1 million. Well, now you have to default because you're out of money. My shell corporation, we should have had gas pumps. And so you don't have any money left. You can't do it. So you default on the loan. Now, in a dirty bank, they say, oh my gosh, well, we can't return your entire $1 million, but what we can do is we're going to have to penalize you, say $100,000, and the bank will keep that because it's been a real hassle doing business with you. And so you take your $900,000. The bank takes its fees for their dirty work. It could go to the shell company, or you could clean money. You can buy a boat with it, a Bugatti, another shell corporation. You can start another one. Or maybe if you're, a real patriot, maybe you can finance a war that the U.S. Congress never approved. I'm just saying. Now, let's see what happened to your money, okay? Let's start at the beginning. There you are, kind of tired and sleepy. I don't know why you're digging ditches, but you're like Uncle Sam comes to you. The IRS is like, hey, we need roads and schools and Marines and stuff. And you're like, okay, well, that's my fair share. And so you give your money to the IRS. The IRS immediately gives it to the Treasury, where you can count on them because nothing funny's going to go on with your money. I'll tell you that right now. We got it in the Treasury, and then Uncle Sam is there guarding it. Yeah, that's right. Stay away. We're only going to use it for important things like bailing out a bank over in Ukraine. I know this guy would love to do that. So we're going to send it over, $1.8 billion to Privat Bank in Ukraine. Well, you might say, Glenn, it's in Ukraine. What could possibly happen there? Well, The good news is they now have branches in Cyprus. Oh, I remember Cyprus. That's right. Okay, well, they have a branch there. And the good news is that Kolomoisky has connections to 42 offshore shell companies in places like Belize and Panama. And you know what's really crazy? He decided that all of his 42 companies all around the world, they wanted to do business in Cyprus at Privatbank. I mean, I don't know why they didn't want to do it, in Ukraine, but they did it in Cyprus, the money laundering capital of the world. Then they made payments because all these companies were going to be so successful. And guess how much money they needed? Guess how much money? It was a loan for $1.8 billion, which is crazy, right? Because that's the same amount of money that we've lost. $1.8 billion is what they poured into there. And then, once they poured that $1.8 billion in, and they had to default on the rest of the loan, and gosh darn it, their companies, all 42 of them, defaulted. Wow. Now, here's the problem. This is why I can't tell you for sure that he bought tanks or Bugattis, because from there, it gets snarled up. They're moving this money place to place, shell company to shell company. You can't find, did it end up at the Bugatti store or Tanks R Us? So does this look at all like this? $1.8 billion in your money. Ferraris are one hell of a war chest. A literal war. So now, let me take you back to the July 25th phone call real quick. The prosecutor, who is very good, and then he was shut down. Yeah, he was very good. He was looking into all of this. He was following this money trail. Something's wrong here. Do you think the prosecutor was in on this scam? This was at the highest levels. He didn't know. He's just following dirt. What about, I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. Well, President Zelensky was a comedian before he was elected. His show was broadcast on the 1+1 TV channel. Guess who owns the TV channel? You got it. Vroom! Mr. Chainsaw Saturday Night. In fact, he was considered Zelensky's main backer during the campaign. Now, after evidence began to come out about the shadiness of Privatbank, the government immediately nationalized it. No telling how much dirty money Kolomoisky lost when that happened, and I can't wait to tell you that story in about 2 minutes. But guess who's trying now to lobby President Zelensky to lift the nationalization? Yeah, Kolomoisky. Is it possible that this is who President Trump was referring to? Is there any question now as to why investigating Hunter Biden is so important? He's the only U.S. citizen that could be the link to this entire operation. He didn't take the 1.8, but he's the link. The only thing that needs to be done now is follow the money, Congress. Follow the money. Please, Senator Grassley. Please, Senator Johnson. Please follow the money. As I showed you earlier, it's not easy. Laundered money is designed to be invisible, but it's not exactly totally impossible. Because I want to show you this. It's the document I started with. This document is a document from the Office for Prevention of Laundering of Proceeds Derived from Criminal Activity, Prosecutor's Office from the Republic of Latvia. It was sent to the colleagues at the Financial Investigative Crime Unit in Ukraine. And it says here they were actively investigating suspicious wire transfers from Burisma. And they heard that Hunter Biden was, quote, involved in a corrupt affair. And they found some suspicious activity. And the Latvian authorities here say, Burisma Holding Limited transferred money to Director Hunter Biden and are involved in a corruption affair. Following the transactions made to Burisma Holding Limited, account as Privat Bank, known to the Latvian Financial Investigation Unit, then it says from July 12th until July 2015, a total of, and then it just has all of these different balances, were received from WireLogic Technology as payments for loan agreements. Oh, like the one you default on. Sound familiar? Funds transferred from Burisma's Privat Bank account in Cyprus through Latvia directly into the accounts of Devon Archer and Hunter Biden. Do you remember the $23 million that was frozen back in 2014? This is a carbon copy of that money laundering case. But this time, it wasn't some obscure shell company in London receiving the funds. It was Hunter Biden. Now, you've heard from the media and from the Democrats. Biden didn't pressure Ukraine to fire Prosecutor Shokin, the guy Trump referred to on the July 25th phone call as the prosecutor who was very good and then was shut down due to an investigation into Burisma and his son. This is from the Ukrainian media debunking that false claim. Shokin asked a Ukrainian court to authorize the seizing of Burisma assets on February 2nd, 2016. After that investigation began, the Latvian document that implicated Hunter Biden was transmitted to Ukraine 2 weeks later. The next order of business, as per Shokin in this interview, was, quote, "We were going to interrogate Biden Jr., Archer, and so on. But guess what happened next? Joe Biden and Shokin had him fired just a couple of weeks later. Remember, Obama was fine with it. But how could Obama be fine with it if it was all about corruption alone?" Back to the July 25th phone call. The president mentioned the cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. Now, this is always confusing to me because the entire CrowdStrike story revolves around a conspiracy theory. Democrats in the media have pounced on this to discredit the Trump team's case. It enabled the narrative that Republicans don't really believe that Russia interfered in the 2016 election and Ukraine was instead, the only one doing it. And all of that was hogwash. Yes, Russia interfered, but so did Ukraine in completely different ways. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Both can be true. So why was Trump bringing up CrowdStrike? And then I began to wonder if the mention of CrowdStrike had some other meaning, that it didn't have anything to do at all with conspiracy theory. Again, we followed the money. An Arkansas judge just ordered Hunter Biden to appear in a court for a paternity case. Biden missed a deadline to deliver financial information, and his lawyers were fed up with not being able to quantify what he owed to his former girlfriend, one-night stand, whatever it was. He was set to appear in court last week, but at the last minute, Hunter's lawyers cut a deal that made him pay an undisclosed settlement. But here's the cash. He wouldn't have to disclose 5 years' worth of financial information. And what's interesting about that is those 5 years of information happen to be exact time frame when Biden was with Burisma. Isn't that weird? But the settlement included a small caveat. If additional information comes out proving that Hunter Biden was or had additional sources of income, then the case goes back to court. Now, I wonder whatever could they mean? Well, this document was filed in an Arkansas court by the lawyers for Hunter Biden's baby mama, and it's a motion to intervene. It was submitted to allow evidence from a private investigation firm claiming to have information on Hunter Biden's financials. Now, I want you to know clearly this has not been verified by the court, but by the outside firm that alleges to have bank account records for Burisma and Hunter Biden. They go on to identify some of the recipients of the Burisma money laundering web. And I want to show you this from page 6. Quote, Burisma Holdings Limited finances Atlantic Council, Ukraine, associated rogue operatives from the U.S. State Department, Five Eyes, and CrowdStrike in Ukraine using Privat Bank. So if CrowdStrike is in fact part of a list of payees from Burisma, then this is yet another U.S.-based link that our prosecutors could use to follow the money, just like Hunter Biden. What was CrowdStrike? Suddenly the mention of CrowdStrike isn't so laughable because it's not about the conspiracy. It's about money laundering. The media not only failed to ask the right questions, they don't want to ask any questions. But now I hope someone will. But it will take you letting your senators know they must investigate this. All of this is why Hunter Biden's case is so important. It is a possible link to blowing a lid off of the entire operation. We'll finally understand what actually happened to our $1.8 billion aid package that just disappeared. It could destroy a corrupt money laundering ring that is responsible for stealing billions upon billions. This is, God, is that you? Am I running along? It might be time for me to go. This money is world-changing amounts of money. Now you tell me this. Does any of this sound political? Any of it? In the aftermath of that infamous phone call, reporters began to get word that military aid Ukraine had been halted by Trump. And everyone from the Democrats, the media, the impeachment witnesses all said, look at that political stunt against Joe Biden. He was trying to get the dirt on him. This is what the president said at the UN back in September.
We're supporting a country. We want to make sure that country is honest. It's very important to talk about corruption. If you don't talk about corruption, why would you give money to a country that you think is corrupt?
Okay, good point. Now you know the vastness of the corruption. Hunter Biden was implicated as a direct link, not by me, by Latvia, a third country. But the media wasn't having any of this. They jumped on the idea that Trump was so desperate to enlist the aid of a foreign government to knock out apparently somebody who is just going to steal the election. Joe Biden will be out of the race in 4 weeks. They crafted these slick timelines like this one to prove their case. And not surprisingly, their timeline coincides with all of the dates that the impeachment witnesses and the Democrats said were important. On July 3rd, Colonel Vindman found out about the hold on the military aid. July 10th, John Bolton. July 18th, the announcement from the Office of Management and Budget. Everything leading up to the July 25th phone call. Well, if you want to craft a story, and it's all about political intrigue, and not having anything to do with corruption in general, this is the timeline I would build. But if I'm looking for the truth, I might delete some things and just stick to what's important and add things that you've never been told. Here's my timeline. Everything in green are things you have never been told. Mine would begin here in September of 2014, when $1.8 billion disappeared from Kolomoisky's Privat Bank. Then we'd skip to December 16, when Ukraine finally says enough is enough, and they seized Privat Bank from Kolomoisky for enriching himself on the IMF loans. IMF loans? What, the IMF loans? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the additional $7 billion. Okay, wait a minute. December 2016? What happened then? That's when Donald Trump was elected in November of 2016, so they knew they no longer had Biden to worry about. In October 2018, the IMF reached what's called a staff-level agreement to begin giving money again to Ukraine. But the agreement was subject to, and I quote, IMF management approval and approval by the IMF Executive Board. Okay, board review. So there were conditions tied to this. And what were those conditions? Oh yeah, Privat Bank. They had to seize that. The IMF said, quote, it's about the court of reform and the rule of law. It's about the oligarchic power structure. So soon as they seized the bank, that's when the IMF said, okay, we'll lend you some more money. Now, let's go to July 25th. The media just wants to say, Trump, the phone call, look here, July 25th. But did you know on the very same day, the IMF holds a press conference. And this press conference is about Ukraine and the new president and a $5 billion loan. Watch.
They also said that Ukraine could receive $2 billion in loans from the IMF this year under a new assistance program. Any update on that? On Ukraine, we have approved in the recent past a standby arrangement. It's in the order of about $3.9 billion. And there was a disbursement made actually under that following the board approval. So to update that, we had an IMF mission visiting Kiev earlier this summer, toward the end of May, to discuss recent developments and economic policies, including with the new government. We issued a statement after that in which he noted, and this is kind of where we are, that the team stands ready to return to Kiev, to Ukraine, to continue discussions after the parliamentary elections and as soon as the new government is able to clarify its policy intentions.
Can you imagine listening to that guy for longer than that? Oh my gosh, no wonder nobody paid attention to that. Good God. What was he saying there? Hey, we need some things, we need some promises because they're dirty, okay? And they hold this press conference about the $5 billion loan. Same day of the phone call, which is weird, right? They were saying they need certain things from the administration, which is what Trump said on his phone call the same day. That's weird. By the way, could you do me a favor? I would like you to right now tweet the hashtag Ukraine Final Peace. We have tens of thousands of people watching right now. We need that to trend so Congress sees it and the media sees it. Please, hashtag that. Let's get that trending. I would like it to be trending worldwide because this is a global story. But let's just shoot for America. Okay. So the timeline then proceeds after July 25th to list the dates that praises their own reporting and actions from the Democrats. Find out what's happening with the military aid. Mine skips all of that, and we just go to September 10th. Okay? September 10th, remember the video I just played. The IMF made mention of a delegation that's going to go to Ukraine that would iron out the details for the release of the $5 billion. We want to help them, but they got to clean things up. So we're going to meet with them September 10th, and they do. Oh, also on September 10th, the Office of Management and Budget, the White House, they sent an email to Ukraine, you haven't been told this yet, about an obligating event. Now, an obligating event. Now, remember, they say the reason Trump released the aid is because he got caught. We have, let me give you this one. This one's from the Freedom of Information Act. Do I have it here? Freedom of Information. Here it is. This is from the Freedom of Information Act. This is from the Executive Office of the President, the Office of Management and Budget. These are the emails sent in the White House from the OMB regarding the freeze and release of the military aid. This was sent on September 10th. Well, that's the same day the IMF delegation team was meeting in Ukraine. It states, quote, DOD is authorized and funds are available to continue all processes up until an obligation event. Now, an obligation event is a term used in international financial reporting standards. The exact definition is an obligating event is an event that creates a legal or constructive obligation that results in an entity having no realistic opportunity or alternative than to settle that obligation. In other words, no play, no pay. The White House is waiting for something very specific to happen. Yeah, for a press conference on CNN. You know, the IMF was waiting for something too. On the same day, they both requested it. Seems curious that this conversation was occurring the day the IMF was scheduled to arrive in Kiev. What sounds even more curious is that this happened the day before the aid would be released on September 11th. But let's go now to September 11th on the timeline. The military aid was released. But that's what the media will tell you. But wait. Weren't we waiting for an obligating event before that could happen? The IMF stated Privat Bank and the oligarch power structure were directly responsible for the previous holdup of aid, so they were going to go on the 10th and talk about it so they could get it all cleaned up. We also know Trump was actively lobbying Ukraine to look into Hunter Biden, which leads to Burisma, Privat Bank, and Kolomoisky. Well, we have two more entries for the timeline that are brand new that you've never seen. Why, I wonder? September 10th, as the IMF was arriving, that crept up on me. It's following me, isn't it? As they were arriving, the White House Budget Office discussing their obligating event, the Ukrainian president that night met with, guess who? Kolomoisky. For the first time since the inauguration. What a coincidence. Now, I don't know what they talked about, but I'm wondering if maybe President Zelensky said to Kolomoisky, hey, tomorrow morning, we're going to come in with federal troops and we're going to do a raid on Privat Bank. Do you think that might have been discussed on the same day that they got this email from the White House and the troops arrived from the IMF? Because the very next day, special forces raided Privat Bank, seizing documents and the evidence. If you want to expose Ukraine's systematic corruption and discover what really happened to the theft now of almost $9 billion, this is what you need to do. It had to happen. Let's call it a obligating event, shall we? How come you don't know any of this? The president released the military aid the exact same day. Trump wanted a public announcement of investigations. Now, I look at that and say, he didn't want somebody to go on CNN. You can say anything. I want action. If he's really looking for corruption, I don't care what somebody says on CNN. A special forces daylight raid on Ukraine's biggest and most corrupt bank is one hell of a public announcement. But you never heard it because no one ever told you that. Because they wanted it to look like we just released that money because Trump freaked out. Trump would go on to release the hold on the aid, and the IMF would also unfreeze their loan of $5 billion. But you see, that doesn't fit the narrative for both the Democrats and the mainstream media. It doesn't help them accomplish what they want to accomplish. They told us this was all about politics against Biden. It couldn't be about corruption, money laundering, missing U.S. dollars. How could the Biden case lead to exposing the entire operation? That's crazy. They had already made up their minds. Digging for what really was behind all of this wasn't needed. In fact, and I mean this sincerely, it might even be dangerous for the Bidens. Remember, Let me go back to the emails released. I just showed you from the Freedom of Information Act. A few days after the raid on Kolomoisky's Privat Bank, the man in charge of releasing military aid here in the United States in the office of OMB emailed the news of that story to himself. This is the story. A bank scandal, an oligarch, and the IMF. Now let me translate that title with what we now know. Privat Bank, Kolomoisky, and the curious case of the missing $1.8 billion. It's been about this the whole time. Following the money trail from Hunter Biden could expose everything. Why would Mike Duffy all of a sudden release all of this money and then email himself a news story about a scandal, the oligarch and the IMF? Quite honestly, if I'm him and I'm just a public servant and I know if they're doing this to the president, God only knows what they'll do to me. I make sure I have some sort of paper trail. I at least do that so I can say, yes, that's what this is all about. I was doing what I was told, an obligating event. I did that as an insurance policy in case I was ever asked about motive. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if... I know Kolomoisky armed people. I don't know if he used our money to fight that war with Russia or his. If he used his money, then he took all of our money and bought Bugattis and everything else. And God only knows what he's doing with all that money. We should be interested and we should investigate and find out. If he was using our money to fund a war, then Congress, you had a president lie to you, not just the American people, lie to you and take your authority for your war powers, which I know every single Democrat cares about. He took your power away illegally and was fighting a foreign war. You can't even begin to understand that July 25th phone call without first getting the full context. And you need Hunter Biden himself in a formal Senate inquiry that has the power to subpoena the bank records in both the U.S. and Privat in Ukraine. We're talking about the theft of nearly $2 billion of your money, and billions more may be sitting in shady offshore banks that God only knows who's doing what with God only knows what or to what. This is world-changing amounts of money. This is going around the constitutional authorities and running a private war. That's my suspicion. I actually hope to God it was only about money. Whether my suspicions are right about this or whether you want the Bidens cleared of this or not, we should all be demanding this inquiry go forward. Maybe the Bidens can be cleared of all of this. Maybe, honestly, I said this earlier, and they would never do this for me or for you or Donald Trump. But maybe Joe Biden and Hunter were doing something they really thought was right. Maybe everybody in the State Department and the embassy really thought it was right. Okay, maybe. But it wasn't right. It was wrong. These puzzle pieces shouldn't have been so easy to put together. Not that they were. It took us months. These coincidences should not be so obvious. I mean, look at that timeline. One of those. But the dates all line up? Regardless, there's more than enough here to justify President Trump's asking for Ukraine's president to look into it all. I don't really care. He's already been acquitted of all of that. But history demands the truth. But more importantly, don't you want your money back? Ukraine wants to get back on their feet. How can they? How can they? If they know this kind of corruption can be jammed down their throats by us. It's not a quid pro quo. It's a win-win. Would you do me a favor? I asked you to hashtag Ukraine Final Peace. And we are trending now nationally number 4. I'd love to see this continue to go up, but it's going to take you doing that. And I want you to tag the Bidens, tag your senator, tag Senator Grassley, Ron Johnson, Senator Johnson. Please tag them. We are delivering all of this to Congress, to specifically Grassley's office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I want them to hear from you about it, so when we show up, they can't wait to see it. All of this stuff has been done because of you. And I have an announcement to make about my TV show. But it's really important that you subscribe to the BlazeTV for a couple of reasons. I am very concerned that voices are being limited and squashed. And if you see our voices on the BlazeTV, we work hard to have people that are not in lockstep. I mean, we don't agree on everything. We just love America. All of us, that's the one thing. Do you love America? Do you like the Constitution? Can you give me maybe 8 out of the 9 Bill of Rights that we at least say 8 of them are good? Okay, you're fine. Come on in. And now it is more important than ever. You will get a significant discount tonight off of all of our exclusive content, and we will bring you the truth as we understand it. We will make mistakes from time to time. I hope I haven't made any tonight, but if I do, I will be the first to tell you it was a mistake. Now, let me tell you, because you already have subscribed, so many of you, there are some exciting changes to my show. We have learned a lot in the last 8 months, and we are now in a position to do something about it. What I have always known I do best is connect dots and tell you what's really going on. But I don't know if you've seen the news lately. This is probably the biggest news week of my life. I don't know of a week that has been this chaotic, all of it. I mean, today I was almost done with my radio show before we even got to the story about the Iowa caucus, which happened on Monday. We can't keep up with all of it. And my job is on radio and in the news and why it matters to tell you what's happening every day. So beginning next Wednesday, and every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central on BlazeTV, I am going to go deep into the big stories. It is because of you that we can do this. I can't keep up with the day-to-day and dig for the big stories and do them more than once every 2 months. The news and our country deserves to have someone really dig. So on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. On BlazeTV, and then on Fridays for BlazeTV subscribers only, I will bring you either the big interview of the week or the big stories of the week and what they mean. Just because my Glenn TV show will no longer be a 4-day-a-week, 30 minutes, I am going to continue to bring you daily content on my radio show, and I will still be on at 5 o'clock. It's just going to expand the news and why it matters, and I will be there with my friends to explain the news as it happens. But my research staff really needs to concentrate on one show a week. It's the only way we can do this. You should see them, and please, I would ask that you would keep them in your prayers. Every single person on my team is amazing and has grown so much in the last year. We are going to do some incredible things. We'll continue to bring you the exclusive in-depth interviews with the high-profile change makers on my podcast as well. So lots of ways to watch, but if you really want the dots connected, that will be Wednesday night at 9 p.m., and it will run an hour. My coverage of the Bidens is far from over. And on our first Wednesday night broadcast next Wednesday, we're going deep again. Now, I don't think Joe Biden is going to make it for a month. I don't think he's going to be the guy. But it is very important because Hunter Biden, the money he made in Ukraine was small potatoes compared to what he pulled off in China. Cashing in on the Biden family name in China has terrifying implications for our national security. Next Wednesday at 9 p.m. on BlazeTV, we're going to show you the rest of the story. You don't know the half of it. The real enemy, China. Wednesday, BlazeTV. Good night.